You are carrying enough energy in your body to survive for many more weeks. Yet just a few hours without a meal makes you feel exhausted. The problem is not that you lack energy. The problem is that your body cannot access it. Most people begin their fat loss journey with a very common belief if they feel hungry, if they feel tired, if they lose focus when they do not eat, then it must be a sign that their body is running out of energy. But from a biological perspective, that is almost never true. The human body is not designed to depend on constant eating. It is designed to be flexible, to survive in an environment where food is not always available, and that flexibility is exactly what most people have lost. You need to understand one thing before going further. Your body does not run on a single fuel source. It is a dual fuel system. The first source is glucose, coming from carbohydrates, used quickly, easily, and familiarly. The second source is stored fat, a massive, stable, and highly efficient energy reserve. An average person may store only about 1,000 to 2,000 calories as glycogen, but carries tens of thousands of calories as fat without even realizing it. Logically, this means your body almost never truly runs out of energy. So why do you still feel hungry just a few hours after eating? The answer lies in signals, not in the amount of energy. Your body does not decide what to burn based on how many calories you have. It decides based on hormones. And the most important hormone in this story is insulin. Insulin is not just a blood sugar control hormone, as many people think. Its main role is to determine whether energy will be used or stored. When insulin is high, the body receives the signal that energy is abundant and should be stored. At that point, fat burning is almost completely shut down. On the other hand, when insulin drops, the body begins to unlock fat stores and switch to using them as fuel. The problem is that modern lifestyle keeps your insulin from ever dropping low enough. You eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, plus snacks, sweets, sugary coffee. Each time, insulin rises again. And when this repeats long enough, your body becomes programmed to rely only on glucose. Fat is still there. Energy is still there, but it is biologically locked away. This is what science calls metabolic inflexibility. When the body loses the ability to smoothly switch between two fuel sources, and that is why you feel tired when you do not eat. Not because you lack energy, but because you are dependent on a single fuel source. When glucose drops, your body has not yet switched to fat. It falls into a gap, a state of being stuck between two systems. Your brain interprets this state as a threat. It sends hunger signals. It makes you irritable. It reduces your focus. But in reality, this is not a danger signal. It is a transition signal. What is interesting is that your body used to be very good at this. Our ancestors did not have refrigerators, did not follow a fixed 3-meal schedule every day. They lived in cycles of eating and not eating, and their bodies were optimized to function efficiently in both states. But when you repeat continuous eating over many years, you are unintentionally teaching your body there is no need to use fat. Food will always come. And over time, your body starts to believe that if you have ever felt that you cannot fast, that you need to eat as soon as you feel hungry. then the problem may not be your willpower. The problem lies in how your biological system has been set up, and the most important thing you need to understand in this part is hunger does not always reflect a true energy need. It often reflects habits, hormones, and the dependency you have built over many years. When you begin to see your body this way, something changes. You no longer see hunger as the enemy. You begin to see it as a signal that your body is trying to switch, trying to return to the state it was originally designed to operate in, and that is the starting point of regaining control. But there is a detail that most people have never realized. The hunger you feel does not always come from your body lacking energy. It comes from the time your body is used to eating. There is a hormone called ghrelin. Many people think this is a hunger switch that turns on when the body runs out of energy. But in reality, ghrelin functions more like a biological clock than a fuel sensor. If you eat lunch at 12 o'clock every day, your body will begin releasing ghrelin before that time. Even if you still have plenty of energy from your previous meal, this explains a very familiar phenomenon. You may be busy, focused, not even thinking about food. But at the usual time, hunger appears very clearly, almost forcing you to eat. And if you eat immediately at that moment, you are unintentionally reinforcing this loop. The brain learns that whenever this signal appears, it will be rewarded with food. Over time, this signal becomes stronger, faster, and harder to resist. But here is the key point that almost no one tells you. If you do not eat when ghrelin rises, that hunger does not last forever. It peaks, then naturally decreases within about 60 to 90 minutes, not because your body has received energy, but because the hormone signal has completed its cycle. That means most of the hunger you experience is not a biological emergency, but a programmed reflex. And when you begin to delay that reflex, something important happens. You are retraining your body. You are breaking the link between signal and action. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. Your brain will react more strongly, send louder signals, create a greater sense of urgency. But if you get through this phase, the intensity of hunger will drop significantly. It no longer feels forceful, but becomes a mild signal you can control. At the same time, another process is happening inside your body that you cannot see. When you do not eat, glycogen in the liver begins to be used to maintain stable blood sugar. This is a fast access reserve of energy, but it is limited. As glycogen levels decrease, the body is forced to prepare for the next step. But if you eat as soon as you feel hungry, you will never reach that transition point. This is exactly why many people say they cannot fast, while in reality, they have never gone far enough for their body to adapt. They always stop at the most uncomfortable moment, right before the body begins switching to fat. And because of that, every attempt feels the same hunger, fatigue, then giving up, not because they are weak, but because they do not understand what is happening inside. When you see this clearly, an important shift happens in how you respond to hunger. You no longer see it as a signal that you must eat immediately. You begin to see it as a wave. It comes, it peaks, and then it passes. And your job is not to shut it down instantly, but to observe it without reacting too quickly. This is the first transition, and also the most important one, because if you cannot get through this signal phase, you will never reach the next stage, where your body truly begins to unlock the energy you have been carrying all along. But even if you understand that hunger is just a signal, and you begin learning not to react immediately, there is still a bigger barrier that almost everyone encounters. That is the phase where your body is not yet ready to use fat, but no longer has enough glucose to function comfortably. This is the point many people describe as "I feel weaker," "My mind feels foggy," or "I do not have enough energy to focus." And if you do not understand what is happening, you will think your body is lacking fuel. But in reality, you are in a very specific metabolic state, a competition between two energy systems. In physiology, there is a very clear principle. The body does not prioritize burning fat when glucose is still available, when you have just eaten, or when glycogen is still present in the liver and muscles. The body continues to use glucose because it is the fastest pathway. Meanwhile, the fat-burning system is almost on standby. It does not need to activate yet. The problem is that when glucose begins to drop, the fat-burning system does not turn on immediately. It needs time to activate. It needs the right hormonal signals, especially a sufficiently low level of insulin. And during this transition period, you fall into a state where neither system is operating optimally. This is exactly why you feel uncomfortable. Not because you do not have energy, but because your body has not yet switched to the other fuel source. If you could look inside at that moment, you would see a sequence of changes happening very clearly. Glycogen continues to decline. Insulin begins to fall. At the same time, the body increases signals that mobilize fat. One of the most important enzymes at this stage is hormone-sensitive lipase. When this enzyme is activated, triglycerides in fat cells begin to be broken down into free fatty acids and glycerol, and are released into the bloodstream to be used as energy. But this process does not happen instantly. It requires a threshold, and most people never reach that threshold. They stop at the moment of greatest discomfort. They eat right when the old system is shutting down, but the new system has not yet turned on. This keeps them trapped in the same loop, dependent on glucose, unable to access fat, and constantly feeling low energy when not eating. If you are patient enough to move through this phase, a very clear transition occurs. When insulin drops low enough, the door to your fat stores truly opens. Fatty acids begin to be used more widely. The liver begins converting part of these fatty acids into ketones, a form of fuel that the brain can use very efficiently. And this is the moment when your experience completely changes. Energy no longer fluctuates. Hunger no longer feels urgent. Your mind becomes clearer, not because you have just eaten, but because you are finally using the fuel your body was designed to rely on when food is not available. Many people describe this stage as a surprise. They enter fasting, expecting to feel weaker, but instead feel more stable. This is not a subjective feeling. It is the result of a very specific biological shift. When the body switches to using fat and ketones, the nervous system begins increasing the release of norepinephrine, a hormone associated with alertness and focus. This has a clear evolutionary purpose. A body in a state of food scarcity cannot afford to become sluggish or sleepy. It needs to stay alert to find new sources of food. And that is why, contrary to popular belief, fasting does not shut down your energy. If you go far enough for the body to fully transition, it does the opposite. It activates a different mode of operation, where energy is more stable and the brain is sharper. But there is one important thing you need to understand here. This state does not happen because you tolerate it better. It happens because you have given your body enough time to switch its fuel system, and once you have experienced it, the way you see hunger, energy, and your own body will never be the same again. But once you reach that state, when your energy is more stable, your mind is clearer, and hunger no longer controls you the way it used to. Another fear almost inevitably appears. Am I losing muscle? This is one of the most deeply ingrained beliefs in modern nutrition, that if you do not constantly supply protein, your body will begin to burn muscle for energy. It sounds logical, but from a biological perspective, it contradicts how the body is designed to survive. Muscle is not a luxury. It is a survival tool. A body that loses muscle during periods of food scarcity becomes weaker, slower, and less adaptable. In a natural environment, that means reduced ability to hunt and a higher risk of being eliminated. Therefore, the body is not programmed to destroy muscle the moment you stop eating for a few hours or even a few days. It is programmed to protect muscle and use other energy sources first. And that energy source is fat. When you enter a sufficiently long fasting state, an important hormonal shift occurs. The body begins to increase production of human growth hormone. The role of this hormone is very clear: preserve lean tissue while promoting fat breakdown. This is not a random response. It is a survival strategy, refined over millions of years of evolution. This explains why, in studies on short-term fasting, the body prioritizes using fat rather than muscle as fuel. Muscle is only significantly broken down in extreme prolonged starvation, when fat reserves are nearly depleted. But that is not the state of most people trying to improve their health or lose fat. Under normal conditions, the body always chooses the more efficient option, burning fat to preserve muscle. Understanding this completely changes how you view fasting. It is no longer an act of sacrificing muscle to lose weight, but a smart redistribution of energy where the body uses the right fuel at the right time. But what is even more interesting is that while muscle is being protected, another deeper process is taking place. One you cannot see, cannot immediately feel, but which has long-term effects on your health. That is cellular cleanup. When you eat continuously, the body stays in a growth state. Cells constantly receive signals to build, store, and expand, but any system that only builds without cleaning will, over time, accumulate errors. Proteins become damaged. Cellular structures degrade. And components that no longer function properly continue to exist. And this is the foundation of aging and many metabolic diseases. When you stop eating for a long enough period, the body switches into a different mode. It temporarily pauses building and begins repairing old, faulty, or unnecessary components are broken down and recycled. This process is scientifically known as autophagy, a mechanism demonstrated by Yoshinori Ohsumi. What matters here is not the term, but its meaning. Your body is not just burning fat. It is cleaning itself. And this does not happen efficiently when you are constantly eating. It requires a gap, a period of time when nutritional signals drop low enough for the body to switch into maintenance mode. When you begin to see fasting this way, your goal changes. It is no longer just about losing weight or fat. It becomes a way to restore basic functions your body already has, but which have been disrupted by modern lifestyle. And at this point, the picture becomes clearer. You are not getting weaker when you do not eat. You are switching to a different system. You are not losing muscle. You are protecting it. You are not shutting down. You are repairing what has accumulated over many years. But all of these benefits can disappear very quickly, within just a few minutes. If you end the process the wrong way, because there is a decisive moment that most people never pay attention to, not when you start fasting, but when you end it, you may have gone through the entire transition. You overcame habitual hunger. You passed through the uncomfortable phase when your body was stuck between two fuel systems. You opened the door to your fat stores, stabilized your energy, and even activated deep repair mechanisms. But with just one wrong choice at the moment you break your fast, you can pull the entire system back to the starting point. The reason lies in something very simple, but extremely important. After a period without eating, your body becomes more insulin sensitive than ever. Your cells from muscle, 抽力, to fat tissue are all in a state ready to absorb energy. This is a major biological advantage. But at the same time, it is also a double-edged sword. If the first signal you introduce is sugar, soda, white bread, or any form of refined carbohydrate, insulin will spike very quickly. And when insulin spikes, the body receives a very clear message. Energy is abundant and must be stored. Fat burning stops almost immediately. The system you just spent hours activating is shut down within minutes. This is why many people say fasting does not work long term. Not because fasting itself fails, but because the way they end, it destroys all the benefits they just created. On the other hand, if you understand how your body responds at that moment, you can take advantage of it. When you break your fast with protein, healthy fats, and fiber, you send a completely different signal. Insulin rises slightly, enough to deliver nutrients into cells, but not enough to shut down fat burning. Energy remains stable. Satiety comes sooner, and most importantly, you maintain the metabolic flexibility you just built. This leads to another mistake that many people make. They see fasting as something to endure and eating again as a reward. They think that after fasting long enough, they deserve a large meal. But from a biological perspective, the body does not understand the concept of reward. It only understands signals. And when you consume a large amount of energy in a short time, regardless of the type of food, insulin will still rise sharply, and the body will shift into storage mode. Fasting is not a cycle of restriction, then compensation. It is a cycle of precise signaling. Each phase, not eating and eating, has its own role, and if either phase is done incorrectly, the entire system loses balance. Another important thing you need to understand is this metabolic flexibility is not something you achieve after a single fast. It is the result of repetition. When you maintain a consistent non-eating window every day, your body begins to relearn how to switch smoothly between glucose and fat. Hunger gradually decreases. Energy becomes more stable, and you are no longer dependent on constant eating to function. On the other hand, if you fast inconsistently, without structure, or combine it with uncontrolled eating, your body will never truly adapt. Each fasting attempt becomes uncomfortable, as if you are starting from the beginning every time. And this is where many people misunderstand. They think the longer the fast, the better. But the body does not work that way. It responds best to consistency, not extremes. A moderate fasting window, repeated consistently, creates far deeper changes than long, unsustainable fasts. When you start to see this entire process as a system of signals, from the moment you stop eating, how you respond to hunger, how your body switches fuel, to how you eat, again, you begin to notice something very clear. Fasting is not a weight loss method. It is a way to restore the biological rhythm your body was originally designed to operate on. And when that rhythm is restored, things like stable energy, fat loss, or appetite control are no longer goals you have to chase. They become natural outcomes. At this point, the question is no longer how long can you fast? It is, can you redesign how your body uses energy? But there is a truth that few people say directly. The problem is not that you cannot fast. The problem is that you have never given your body the chance to relearn how to function without constant food intake. You were taught that hunger is dangerous. You must eat as soon as you feel hungry. If you do not eat, your body will shut down. But biology says the opposite. Your body is not afraid of a few hours without food. It is afraid of being trapped in a system that only knows how to depend on food. And when that happens, you will always need to eat to have energy, need to eat to focus, need to eat to feel normal. Not because you are weak, but because you have lost the ability to use your own internal energy. And here is the twist you need to understand clearly. Fasting is not something that makes you lose weight. It simply removes the barrier that is preventing you from burning fat. You do not need to create new energy. You already have it. You just need to unlock it. So if you are trying to exercise more, eat less, control calories more strictly, but still feel constantly hungry, unstable energy, unable to lose fat, then you may be solving the wrong problem. This is not a how many calories problem. This is is your body allowed to use fat or not problem? And now, I want you to answer a very simple question. The last time you felt hungry, was it because your body truly needed energy, or simply because it was time to eat? If you recognize the difference, everything you think about eating, fat loss, and energy will completely change. Comment your answer below. And if you want me to go deeper into how to set up fasting correctly for different body types, not based on trends, but on biology, subscribe to the channel. Because sometimes what you need is not to do more, but to understand more accurately how your body truly works